Hey guys, OG Albini here, bringing you guys another Draft League tier list video. Today we are going to be going over each and every one of the psychic types in the Draft League format, their viability, how good they are, the value that they offer, and all that good stuff. I'm sure you guys have seen the other, tier list videos in the playlist if you're watching this, but if not, go check out the playlist on the channel with all of the other typings up to this point. But we're getting through there, and honestly, we're at one of the best typings. Just thinking through all of the Pokemon that I love to draft and I love to use personally, it is going to be really hard to not have 25 S tiers right here. The Psychic typing has a lot of defensive utility, a lot of them have great offensive coverage, great special attack and special defense stats, a lot of them are incredibly fast, a lot of them are incredibly bulky, and they offer a lot to teams. So I'm really excited to do this tier list. I think this might be the strongest type yet. So if you guys do enjoy today's tier list video, be sure to drop a like on the video as well as subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 2,000 subs. I'd really appreciate your support. And if you want to drop a sub and drop a comment, you're entered in to win a copy of Scarlet and Violet. We're doing a giveaway right now until the end of the week. On Sunday is when I will end it. So you have until then to continue to comment. And I'll be picking a winner in the comments to either set up an eShop gift card or, a digital code for the game or something like that. So yeah, that being said, let's jump into it. Now, first off, as much as I was super hyping up everything we had so far here, we have Alolan Raichu first, which is a super mediocre Pokemon. It really only fits onto one team style, and that's going to be on, like, electric terrain offense with Coco. Don't draft Pincurchin, ladies and gentlemen. But I think on those teams, it can be really scary. I think John is actually using Alolan Raichu very, very well in APA Retirement right now, which he is uploading, so you should definitely go check that out. And I think it could be really threatening under that terrain with Rising Voltage, Volt Switch, having access to Surf and Grass Stomp, but really it lacks a lot of utility outside of that. I think it's really menacing on that specific team style, but it doesn't have much utility outside of it, and it's really hard to justify drafting and spending points on it when you already have your strong electric in Coco. So I'm not the biggest on it, but we're gonna put it right there for now at the very least. Next up we have Kadabra. I'm gonna put Kadabra at the top of D tier, and it's for very similar reasons as Alakazam is going to be in A tier right here. It's just a worse version of it, so we can kind of come back and touch on it later if we do end up feeling the D tier is so much worse than Kadabra. But just keep in mind it is a very useful Pokemon. But we'll talk about Zam. Zam is an incredible breaker. It's incredibly fast with base 120 speed tier. It's incredibly strong. Magic Guard is an incredible ability, whether it be your Focus Sash to guarantee live any hit that you want to live, or whether it be because your Life Orb, you're not taking any recoil, but you're ripping through opposing teams. The coverage of just like Psychic, Energy Ball, Dazzling Gleam, Focus Blast, Shadow Ball hits so many different things. Psyshock is another great tool. You can be Nasty Plot, and you can really put a hurt on a lot of teams. I think Zam on like Psychic Terrain offense and Galadex is really cool. Again, it's a Pokemon that's a little bit tough to draft because of its lack of utility outside of being like offense breaker, but it still does have some with being like Focus Sash, Thunder Wave, and things like that, having fast Encore and a bunch of cool different tools like that. Like I think Zam in a creative player's hand can be a menace. We're gonna put Mega Zam up in S tier. Now personally, I don't think you should allow Mega Zam in your leagues. I don't think the because a lot of leagues, they're like, it has to be banned because Nasty Plot. I don't think Nasty Plot is what makes it broken. I think the lack of pursuit is what makes it broken, because now Zam doesn't have to run weird barrier sets to get around the Dark type trying to pursuit trap and things like that. It doesn't have to run really bulky sets. It doesn't have to run like Miracle Eye sets for the Alolan Mucks and Skuntanks and Drapions anymore. Now it can just off a hit and switch out and come back in later and do some damage. Now, Nasty Plot is a great tool for it, but oftentimes I feel like you're not going to click it, or in a setup set, you're going to want to be Calm Mind to boost that Spadef and things like that in a lot of instances with Zam. But really, it does what regular Alakazam does, but with a little bit more defensive utility in the sense of like Spadef. Much faster and incredibly strong. So Zam is absolutely insane, and it's a Pokemon that definitely benefited from the lack of pursuit. And I haven't really mentioned that yet up to this point. Pretty much every one of the Pokemon on this tier list has benefited from the lack of pursuit in the game right now. So that's obviously really nice. Next up, we have another S tier Pokemon in Slowbro. Regen is the best ability in the game, and when you give it to a Pokemon with incredible physical defense, a negative priority move, ways to spread Sass and Scald, Thunder Wave, Toxic, all that fun stuff, it's going to be a nuisance. It has Calm Mind and Nasty Plot to boost up. It has Slack Off for reliable recovery. It can set Trick Room and Teleport, so it's one of the best Trick Room facilitators in the game. Slowbro is just a catch-all Pokemon that does so many things so well. So it's obviously going to be up here in S tier. Mega Bro, I'm actually going to put in A tier though. In the sense that like when you Mega, you lose regen, which is tough. But in non-first turn Mega Leagues, I've drafted Mega Slowbro so many times because of the fact that I can stay regular Slowbro. Pokemon that oftentimes doesn't need its item, I can stay regular Slowbro, take hits, pivot in and out, regen up, and then when I get in that position where I either need to set up and win the game with Calm Mind, Iron Defense, whatever that be, or just take a hit better, I Mega Evolve into my base 1/800,000 defense Mega Slowbro. I'm Shell Armor, so I can't get crit anymore, which is great for crit me not sets. I've run like Rest, Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Scald, like no Sleep Talk, Rest sets and stuff like that before, because you simply become unbreakable at a certain point, which is obviously really nice. It's a bit taunt fodder, and I think a lot of people do prepare aptly for like crit me not Slowbros, but it's really not that bad of a Pokemon in the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I think it's really worth drafting. I think a lot of people give it shit because it's not regular bro, and they see you lose regen. Just don't Mega until you need to, and you have an absolute monster backing you up there defensively, and it's, you know, solid offensively as well too. They both have great coverage, by the way. I didn't really touch on its coverage between Scald, Ice Beam, Flamethrower, and like Grass Knot and Shadow Ball and whatever you might need. Realistically though, you're gonna need like Stabs, Ice Beam, Fire Blast, or Flamethrower, and that's about it. So yeah, it's a pretty solid Pokemon for sure. Next up, we're gonna put Hypno in D tier. I guess like Hypno's not terrible. I have never seen a Hypno do quite literally anything. I'm gonna pull up a team builder on the side to see if I'm absolutely tripping. I think it might get Wish, but like again, why am I using Hypno if I could be drafting so many other cheap, you know, Psychics and things like that? Let's see, does he have Wish? He does have Wish, so he can Wish in Trick Room. Does he get Teleport? He does get Teleport, so I guess there is some value there. It's a nice Spadef wall. 115 base Spadef with 85 HP is pretty nice. So that's cool, but again, there's better options than Hypno in the world, unfortunately. So maybe I'm a hater. Maybe there's some Hypno truthers in the comments. Y'all let me know, but personally, I'm not too big on it. I'm also going to go ahead and put Eggy here in D tier. I think Harvest can be a cool thing. Maybe catch somebody with a cheesy, what do you call it, like Chlorophyll set, but it's not the best thing in the world. That Grass Psychic typing with how slow and passive it can be, not slow or passive, just how slow it is, and it's very mediocre bulk is really tough to get behind. It has a solid special attack stat, but it's another Pokemon that's absolutely stuffed by steel types outside of the potential of like, nope, not even Weather Ball. So really just stuffed by steel types in general. So it's a very bad Sun Sweeper, especially with that base 55 speed. It's just a Pokemon that doesn't really accomplish much for your squad, so I'm gonna go ahead and keep it down there. Next up we have Starmie, and I'm really struggling on where I think Starmie is valued, because it's a Pokemon I definitely personally like a lot. You know what? Hot take. I'm gonna put it in A tier. I don't know if I'm tripping here. I could be crazy, but I think that it is definitely at least an A tier Pokemon in my mind. I think it's great speed tier. Spin is awesome. It can flip turn for momentum now. You can run with analytic life orb sets and just rip through opposing teams. There's not much that switches into this thing's coverage plus analytic. Or you can be fat Nat Cure sets and really be a good status absorber, which is a really underrated aspect of Starmie. Being able to switch in on Thunder Waves and Will-O-Wisps and Toxics and all these fun things, and then just being able to pivot out is incredible. Meteor Beam was a really fun set when I had it. I think I swept Mario B and ICP with just like Meteor Beam 4 attacks, max speed Starmie, which was really cool. So I definitely enjoyed Starmie when I've used it the few times. It really kind of falls flat when you draft your only water type. Its bulk really shows in some matchups, like you play the Darm. It's not going to be a good time, but other than that, it's a really solid Pokemon that I really do enjoy. Next up, we have Mr. Mime, and I got a bit of hate last time I talked about Mr. Mime. I'm still going to put it in D tier personally, but it does get screens and Encore and can set up and things like that. So I do think it has some inherent value in that aspect, but again, there are just so many better Pokemon to draft in your lower tiers than Mr. Mime, and I just personally can't get behind it. No, I do have a hot take. This is a Pokemon I think has a lot of hidden viability in draft, and that's Jynx. As ugly as it is, as dumb as the design is, and as suspect as it is a really cool Pokemon. With Dry Skin, it gives you a water immunity. You get Lovely Cliffs for pretty reliable sleep, and then Nasty Plot plus Focus Blast plus, you know, it's dual stabs and Ice Beam and, you know, Psychic. This thing can be a menace to a lot of teams. I really think that it's a very solid mon. I think it also has a pretty solid speed tier as well. Let me peep the speed tier of the Jynx. Is it 105? It might be 105. 95, which definitely isn't bad, but 115 special attack as well, 95 speed F, so you find your setup opportunities on special attackers, which I think is really cool as well. I don't know, man. I think this mon's pretty awesome. I'm gonna go ahead and put it in C tier. I haven't seen it used as much as I really think it should get used, but I definitely think it deserves a spot right here. Next up, we got another S tier Pokemon. I'm gonna go ahead and put Mew up here. Jack of all trades, no, really master of none. I am kind of a believer of Mew isn't like exceptional at anything besides being Stall Breaker, because Stall Breaker is the best set, being an amazing Stall Breaker. But whether it be defensive sets or offensive sets and things like that, it really does run middle of the pack. But the fact that it can do everything and your opponent has to prepare for literally everything every single week, and a good creative Mew builder can get the absolute most out of it. I wish I got more of it this CGT season, because it really is an absolutely incredible Pokemon. I love my defensive fat Mew sets, but hazards are great. Dragon Dance, Swords Dance, Bulk Up, Nasty Block, Calm Mind, Cosmic Power, Scarf I've even seen put in work. I've seen like Extra Belt sets. I've seen Weakness Policy, Rock Polish sets put in work. There's so many different things you can do with Mew, and the fact that your opponent has to take all of these into account as they play isn't fun for them a lot of the times, let me tell you that. So I think that's definitely it's a very solid Pokemon. Next up, again in C tier, man, we need some B tier psychics, or I'm gonna go crazy here in a second. I feel like they're either great or kind of meh. We're gonna go ahead and put Xatu right here at the top of C tier. I'm teetering on B, but I haven't drafted it in a while, but I do think it's a great Pokemon for its price point, being a great hazard deterrent, being a great what do you call it, fighting check as well, getting great momentum with U-turn or teleport. It can set screens, it can trick room, it can do a bunch of things, it can calm mind, but really as that low tier hazard deterrent, it's pretty solid in its own right. It's not the bulkiest Pokemon or strongest Pokemon in the world, but it definitely has its utility and its uses. Next, I'm gonna put Espeon C tier. I'm not the biggest on Espeon. Again, a Pokemon that's absolutely stuffed by every steal ever, which is a big downside for me personally. I do not like when my psychics are absolutely stuffed by steals and don't have any type of Focus Blast or Mystical Fire to deal with them. But it can set up Calm Minds. If you play in a league with Baton Pass, it's definitely a very good option to grab if you're going for some BP cheese. But it can set up screens. It can do a lot of different things. It can Baton Pass for momentum. It's decently strong. You play in a matchup where, say, a steal is like Bronzong or something like that can get hit by a Shadow Ball, there's potential for an offensive Espeon to put in some work there. So that's obviously nice. Alright, last slow twin of the video. Just kidding, there's so many slow variants. Yeah, look, these guys down here, oh my gosh. Well, last slow king, or slow for a while, and slow king, and he's gonna go up here in S tier. This Pokemon is also amazing. Think of what I said with Slowbro, but the specially defensive version of it. I don't want to go over it again and just absolutely gawk this Pokemon until the ends of the earth, but I definitely do think that it's an amazing Pokemon, and it's a little bit less than Slowbro, but I think, honestly, it really depends on the team you have, too. A lot of times people are like, Slowbro is a little bit better than Slowking. It really depends on what type of squad you have and what you're rolling out with and, going into each season, so. Yeah, definitely a cool Pokemon. Next up, Hot Take. Wobbuffet's gonna go in C tier as well. Oh my gosh, this gap is just bugging me. I think I'm gonna start me down. I've made the executive decision. But Wob has a surprising amount of utility, man. If you draft this thing, it might never come to a game. It might come to one game a season, but it is going to force an immense amount of prep at that 1 point slot, which is awesome. Your opponent most likely should respect Wob coming in and taking on their biggest threat and trapping it and putting you in a terrible position, whether it be encoring you into a setup move or counter mirror coding you and making you die. Wob is amazing in that instance, so I think, well, it's not an amazing Pokemon on its own, especially when you know it can come. Like, it kind of takes away from the potency, but it also puts a lot of stress on the team builder, which I think is an incredibly valuable aspect of draft for a lot of teams, to have to prepare for these kinds of things. It's just very, very straining in the builder. Alrighty, guys, we are back to continue the list, and unfortunately we have yet another very, very mediocre Pokemon here in Girafarig, or mediocre to just straight up bad. Again, it's a Pokemon I just have no experience with, or have never really even seen drafted, to be completely honest with you. Now, I think in Scarlet and Violet, if it gets some cool moveset buffs, it can run Eviolite, things like that. We might see a little bit more Girafarig usage, because it does have solid coverage, especially from the physical attacking side. It's not as strong on the physical attacking side, it seemed like, but it does have like Earthquake and cool things like that. It gets Sucker Punch. It has good special coverage as well. T-Bolt and Psyshock and, you know, Shadow Ball and Energy Ball, Dazzling Gleam, things like that. So it definitely has some fun aspects to it, but overall, it's a very middling, mediocre Pokemon with pretty bad stats, but the Eviolite buff could definitely make it very solid. So I think that's something to definitely keep in mind, that it could, you know, end up being pretty good there with that kind of buff. Now, already done with Gen 2, we have a Celebi. I'm going to go ahead and put Celebi in B tier right here. I actually tried Celebi for the first time recently in NCP within the last year, and it pleasantly surprised me. I liked it a lot. Now, I know, again, people just scream at the 4x bug weakness, but it has the speed and the stats to kind of make up for it, in my opinion. You just have to be careful around obvious U-turns. Like, you're not going to be able to switch this thing in on Lando T. It's an Orlando T check. So you shouldn't kind of, like, construct it and judge it on being such, right? But it is a very solid rocker. It's great with a Calm Mind. It's great with a Nasty Plot. It U-turns around. It has great coverage moves and Earth Power, Dazzling Gleam, alongside with its Dual Stabs and Aura Sphere and things like that. And again, it's just a very, very solid utility Pokemon. Again, Natural Cure is such a good ability. I love having a solid status absorber. Things like Celebi, Shaman are great at doing so. It can heal Bell. It can do so many different things. And again, it's just a very solid. It can Trick as well, which I think is a very important aspect of it. Trick is always a great tool. And Healing Wish is one of the best moves in the game. So, again, you really can't go wrong with Big Celebi here. I like it a lot. Then we have Gardevoir. I'm also going to put Gardevoir here in B tier. Very solid offensively with a Scarf for specs. It can be very annoying, and I think Trace is an incredible ability in Draft League, whether it be for the weather matchup, for regen matchups, just to take advantage of your opponent's abilities and make them your own is incredible, right? But I think it does really lack defensively, and if it is going to be your Fairy, I know this is a Psychic type list, but if you're drafting Gardevoir with its dual Fairy typing, if it's going to be your Fairy, it's pretty mediocre in that regards defensively. So that's a bit unfortunate, but again, still very solid. Mega Guard, on the other hand, is incredible. I recently used Mega Guard in Oras recently, where it's obviously even better. One of the best Pokemon in the Draft League format in Oras. Got a little bit of a nerf in Gen 7 with the Pixelate nerf, but still incredibly strong. Base 165 special attack with Pixelate boosted Hyper Voices. Then it has Psychic, Psyshock, Shadow Ball, Focus Blast, all this crazy coverage to hit things incredibly hard. Mystical Fire this generation, which is awesome. It can Wish, it can Heal Bell, it can Will-O-Wisp. And in this upcoming generation, if it ends up getting Ice Beam, that's also a really cool buff to it. So overall, it's a pretty incredible. I think it also got Recover in, what do you call it, in Legends Arceus. So if Gardevoir keeps Recover in Scarlet and Violet, having Mega Guard with Recover and like Ice Beam is cool. Two little like nice, neat little tech buffs and things like that. Could be incredible. Mega Guard's a really fun Pokemon if you haven't used it already. Okay, next up we have Medicham and Mega Medicham. I'm gonna go ahead and put Medi in C tier. Now keep in mind, we're going to talk more so about Medi when we talk about Mega Medi here in a second, but I do want to mention that in Scarlet and Violet, Medi is in the regional decks, and I think in a limited meta, Medi is going to be a super slept on sleeper pick, and I want to get that in a video so that people don't think that I'm, kind of pulling it out of my ass when I say, I told you guys Medi was going to be the GOAT. Medi's going to be fire this first couple months of Scarlet and Violet draft. You just watch. In the SV decks, it's going to be really solid, so keep that in mind. But next up, we have Mega Medicham, who does what Medi does, but obviously much better with Huge Power or Pure Power as its ability. I forget which one it has. The one that doubles its attack, which both of them do. It just doesn't have switch-ins. There's no switch-ins to Mega Medicham. If this was a list ranked on like how fun a Pokemon is to use, Medi would be in my top 5. I absolutely love using this thing. There is a fighting Psychic Mega that is just a little bit better, unfortunately, but that doesn't make Mega Medicham any less potent and ridiculous offensively. It's very close to an S tier Pokemon for me personally. It really appreciates good Volt Turn offense, getting it in for free, so it can just click High Jump Kick, then Headbutt, Elemental Punches, Fake Out, Bullet Punch, all that good stuff, and just rip through teams. This thing's just like a fat team's nightmare. Even like really bulky squads don't appreciate like bulk upsets and things like that can really break through them and punish them and break them down. So I love Medi. I won my first ever championship with the Mega Medi Coco team. It's like my favorite offensive core in Draft League of all time. So yeah, it's an overall really incredible Pokemon that I definitely enjoy a lot. Now, we just went from a bunch of great Mons, right? Now we're going to start moving down the list a little bit. We're going to have Lunatone and Solrock here. Now, I haven't ever drafted Solrock. Kind kind of mediocre physical attacker. I don't know. Lunatone, I actually enjoyed. One time I did draft it as like a low tier option. Let's see, Lunatone. And it wasn't that bad as a rocker. I brought like Rock Polish, Weakness Policy a couple times. I brought Assault Vest one time. It has good coverage overall between Power Gem, Earth Power, Shadow Ball, Ice Beam, things like that. And can be a big nuisance in that regard. Does it have Ice Beam? It does. Okay, I was like, am I tripping? So it does have access to that. It can also throw off a big Meteor Beam as well, which is a really clutch aspect of it. And again, while its base stats are pretty low, and for a pretty low point Pokemon, it's not that bad. It's like a cheesy little low tier sweeper that you might end up bringing to a couple games. So I'm a big Lunatone guy. Despite it being in D tier objectively, it's definitely worth a slot on a team every once in a while. Next up, we have Grumpig as well. This is another Pokemon, again, I just quite simply have never seen drafted. And it's weird because we see all these top tier psychic types, right? All these really solid ones in C tier and above. And these D tier ones, they aren't necessarily bad, inherently like terrible, but there's so many better psychic types. And again, we haven't even touched on most of the amazing ones yet, right? There's so many better psychic types that these Pokemon just don't see consistent play. I don't think Grumpig's a necessarily terrible Pokemon, but and again, with like access to like thick fat and things like that, an extra fire and ice immunity is always, somewhat nice at the very least. It gets Heal Bell and Focus Blast. It can Nasty Plot as of BDSP. It gets Taunt. It gets some cool things, right? Base 80 as a speed tier isn't terrible. It's a little bit weak and frail on the physical side, but again, why draft Grumpig or Girafarig or Hypno when you can draft everything above them is kind of what it ends up coming down to. Now we have another kind of middle of the range, mid-tier kind of pick here in Claydol. Claydol could be pretty solid. It's like a low-tier rapid spinner. Great Edgequake resist, which is awesome. With being a ground type with Levitate is, again, incredibly clutch. Resisting both Earthquake and Stone Edge is a very unique characteristic that a lot of Pokemon don't share. This thing's a little bit passive offensively, only in 70 in both of its attacking stats, but it does have great coverage. It can Trick Room, it can teleport rocks up, it can screens, it can do a lot of things. It can even set up if you really want it to. I think if Claydol was just a little bit more offensive, it would have a great place in the metagame, but it's just a little bit too passive for my liking right now. Even 75 as a speed tier is pretty incredible. So, overall, honestly, a pretty slept-on pick here in C tier, and I definitely think it's worth a draft spot. We're actually going to move it up here. Okay. Next up, we have Chimecho, another Pokemon I really like. I love the Chimecho line. I think they're so cool, but that doesn't make it a good Pokemon, unfortunately. As much as I wish it did, Chimecho is obviously pretty bad. Again, pretty meandering. Base stat total is kind of what it ends up coming down to. But it is pretty darn bulky, and it has great utility moves, whether it be Recover for Self-Recovery, Wish, Defog, Perish Song, Destiny, or no, not Destiny Bond, Thunder Wave, Trick Room, a bunch of really cool aspects to it that, Healing Wish, so it can be a great utility mon for like 1 or 2 points. I definitely have seen Chimecho drafted before, but actually, and so much so, I'm going to put it above Hypno, because I definitely think it's better personally, so yeah, I think it was just, again, a little bit more bulky, had a little bit more in that HP, defense, and SPDF. Maybe a pretty solid pickup, but again, why draft Chimecho opposed to something like, I guess, a Xatu or something like that. So, yeah, that's how I see it. Next up, we have yet another A-tier Pokemon here, and Big Metagross, my second favorite Pokemon of all time, personally. You could tell what generation I started the games with, my first favorite being Salamence, but I really like Metagross, whether it be as a very reliable rocker, a great Assault Vest pivot slash tank, a ridiculous breaker with a Choice Band, agility, weakness policy sets. I've even seen Meteor Beam Metagross put in a ton of work. It has great coverage overall with Elemental Punches minus Fire Punch, but having Earthquake and things like that. Meteor Mash, Bullet Punch, Rock coverage, things like that. Zen Headbutt, obviously. Again, very reliable rocker. Very just sturdy Pokemon that is always going to do its job when you bring it in, which I think is very important. Next up, we have the Lati Twins. I'm going to put Latias in A tier, and then I'm going to put Latios in S tier, because I definitely love me some Latios. The reason I have Latios a little bit higher is because I dig the offenses of Latios. I like coming in and dropping pretty much unresisted Specs Dracos, in Psychic, Shadow Balls, Mystical Fires, all that fun stuff, Ice Beam, Thunderbolts, which Latias can do as well, but again, not to the same effect offensively. Latias is better defensively, but Latios is still plenty bulky enough to take on the things you need to take it on. They're both great with weakness policies, both great with Calm Minds, Agilities. Latios can go mixed, whereas Latias can't really, which is another kind of driving aspect of it. But again, I really like Latias. I think it's shit on a little bit too often due to its more defensive nature than Latios. I definitely think Latios is better, obviously, and one of the best Psychic types in the format. But Latias definitely gets a little bit too much crap, despite that. Now, the Mega Latis, do not allow those in your leagues. We're not even going to debate that like Megazam, right? Next up, we have Rachi, though, and Rachi is a pretty incredible Pokemon. I'm going to put it here in A tier. Again, we just talked about Metagross with the Steel Psychic typing, being very solid. Rachi is no different, being a reliable rocker, being great with an AV, Scarf, Band, not really Band as much, but Calm Mind or Cosmic Power variants. It's great physical, special, mixed. It gets great utility moves, whether it be Thunderwave, Healing Wish, what else? Why am I blanking? Encore is another great option for it and things like that. It can dual screen, it can trick room, it can do so many different things for a team. Serene Grace is also just an obnoxious ability that is so hard to deal with consistently without risking getting absolutely cheesed. If there's a Scarf Rachi, there's a way. And I'm sure Draft League players know that all too well, unfortunately. So I definitely like me some Jirachi. It's a great Pokemon overall. Now we move on to the Dio forms, and I'm going to go ahead and put Dio S up here in S tier. I love me some DOS. With its great speed tier, not only is it a great spiker and rocker, but it's great with a nasty plot up. It's great with Calm Mind. It's great as a stall breaking variant with like Taunt, Seismic Toss. And having a Pokemon with 200 base speed is just so invaluable in the builder. Being able to outspeed base 100 Scarfers with like no investment is an incredible tool to have. Being able to outspeed everything while being minus speed nature is an incredible tool to have, which is obviously really nice. The fastest taunt in the game, it knocks items off. It's a great utility mod and a great win con. It's a little bit lacking in the power department, but you throw a Life Orb on it or Specs, or you get a Nasty Plot off, and you are breaking through things very well, and you have very solid coverage overall. So it's not like, you're not hitting things hard. You have coverage for things you need to hit, particularly Steel types, with that Focus Blast or Fire Punch if you want to go physical, Drain Punch, same thing. And yeah, just an overall very, very solid Pokemon. Deoxys Defense is honestly a Pokemon I also really, really enjoy. I'm going to go ahead and put it here at the bottom of A tier, but do not get me wrong. I love DOD, and I think it's super slept on. Whether, again, like Dio Speed, it be spiking variants are incredibly solid, but I think the best thing about Dio Defense is its ability to be a phenomenal stall breaker. Having the bulk that it has in base 160 in both of its defenses is incredible, especially because you have a low HP stat, so you're going to always invest in that HP stat. And then 90 speed on a Pokemon this bulky with access to Taunt and Seismic Toss and Nightshade is incredible. It's an incredible tool. I used this thing in my Trick House Haunter run on the channel where I didn't draft any Stealth Rocks other than this, and I never brought Stealth Rock on it, so I never clicked Stealth Rocks the whole season. So that's a pretty cool video you should check out in our movies playlist. But I absolutely love this thing. I thought it was an incredible Pokemon. I always got a bunch of shit, and it was always a lot of fun. So I always got a bunch of shit for drafting it, but I had a lot of fun with it. It's a great Pokemon. Sorry, I got a ping and I kind of lost my train of thought there. But yeah, love me some Dio Defense. Now, we're halfway through the generations up to this point, which is nice. It looks like there's a lot of Psychic types to go, so let's keep on moving. We have Bronzong here, who is definitely going to be a B tier Pokemon here. Higher up on B tier, though. Again, if we want to talk about reliable Pokemon, Bronzong is the epitome of it, getting up rocks every single game. There's very few games where you do have a Bronzong that's your rocker that it doesn't get that potentially multiple times if you do need it to do so. So it's going to do so very well. It's a bit passive, but I think like Iron Defense Body Press sets are really annoying now, or even Dual Dance sets with Calm Mind Iron Defense can be very annoying for a lot of teams. It has solid coverage, and it has the means to break subs and not be completely taken advantage of if you do play and position correctly, which is obviously really nice. So again, I'm a big Bronzong guy, though. It's a very reliable mon. I've drafted it so many times at this point, and obviously would continue to do so. Wow, we're actually already through Generation 4 almost already. There's actually not as much in Generation 4. It looks like Gen 5 has a ton of Psychic types, though, which is pretty interesting. But next up, we have Gallade and Mega Gallade. Gallade is going to go here in C tier. I'm not a huge regular Gallade guy. I've actually never really seen this thing drafted, but I could see why it would have some viability. Again, fighting plus Psychic is a great stab combination. Like, you can't go wrong with it. And it's immune to Intimidate with what do you call it? Steadfast? No. Or is it only Mega Glade? I might be tripping. But regardless, we're going to talk to Mega Glade, who is immune to Intimidate and is immune to having switch-ins. We're going to go ahead and put him up here in S tier. This has by far become probably my favorite Mega Pokemon to use in Draft League. Like, this thing is absolutely incredible. With its great stab combination, priority and Shadow Sneak, having access to elemental punches, as well as knockoff and earthquake. It can Swords Dance, it can bulk up, it can taunt, it can even Will-O-Wisp and be bulky and defensive. But with that 165 attack and that 110 speed, with a meaty stat and a pretty solid defense stat, it is very hard to deal with this Pokemon over the course of a game. You typically have like a one-time switch in that switches in, checks it, and then from there, Mega Glade can 2-hit KO the whole team if it clicks the right button. Unless you have that Slowbro or that Mew or whatever it may be, Mega Glade is going to put you in the dirt if it's positioned correctly and used right. I've absolutely loved it over the course of this gen. I've drafted it so many times throughout the generations, throughout this gen, and it's never let me down once. Okay, now next up we're going to go ahead and rank all of these Pixies here, and personally I'm going to put them all in B tier. I'm going to rank them based on which ones are my personal favorite. Now objectively it might be a little bit different, but I'm going to go with Azelf first, Mesprit second, Uxie third. They're all incredible Pokemon. I've drafted them all so many times, and they all have their own benefits. Azelf, incredibly fast, offensive, great mix, physical, special. It can set up a nasty plot and win the game. It can rocks up, taunt, boom. A lot more offensive blitz play style, and it has access to knock and U-turn like all of these other Pokemon do as well, but it plays much more offensively. Mesprit's a little bit of a mix between the two. It's cheaper than all three of them, which is nice, but I like its ability to flex between offensive and defensive more, especially with getting nasty plot. It's a great nasty plot mon as well. I absolutely love Mesprit. And again, it's a little bit cheaper, so I like it a little bit more than Uxie, but Uxie is still great. Again, as reliable as a Stealth Rocker or something like Bronzong. If you have an Uxie that rocks up, it's going to get rocks up. It can Trick Room, it can do spread knocks a lot more reliably, it pays a lot more passively and slow, but it's a great pivot, and it's a great way to get in your better, physical breakers, or not physical breakers, your breakers in general, and cleave through teams really well, due to it kind of getting in and getting off those slower U-turns, opposed to Azelf coming in and clicking more offensive, switch forcing U-turns. So they all play very differently, but I definitely kind of rank them in this rank. But again, I would use them all. Like, they're all incredible. I'm actually going to go ahead and move them up to the top of the tier. Like, I genuinely think the Lake Guardians are such incredible Draft League Pokemon. So they're going to be at the top of B tier for me, personally. Again, I could be absolutely overrating them, but I definitely love them personally. Okay, next up we have Big Cresselia, who I do not like at all. I'm going to put it at the top of D tier. This might be a hot take. I think it sucks. I hate the passivity of this thing. I think it is so passive and so easy to play around if you know what you're doing. Now, I remember early in my Draft League career, I could not beat this thing. I probably would have put it in S tier if this was like 3 years ago, because I couldn't break it. 120 HP, 120 defense, 130 SPDF with 85 speed. You'd think that's incredible, but it's just so passive. It's taunt fodder. It just gets overwhelmed over the course of a game, and I think it's very, very exploitable. I wouldn't draft it over really anything above it, personally. Maybe I'm being mean. I'm gonna put it in C tier above like Gallade or something, because I'd probably draft it over like Gallade. But yeah, there's not much else, though. I don't know. I'm putting it in D tier in the thumbnail, though, so I can make people mad. And I had it in D tier for a minute, so it's not clickbait, guys. Next up, we do have an incredible Psychic-type Pokemon. A Psychic Fire-type here in Victini. I'm going to go ahead and put this up in S tier, actually above Mew. I have loved using Victini throughout the generations, and Generation 8 in particular. I'm just now using it in the league right now as Generations 8 ending, I think for my first or second time in the gen, and Boots was such a great addition to this thing's arsenal. Not having to worry about hazards anymore, and just coming in and you turning around forever and ever is such a valuable thing for Victini, no longer having to defog away. But there's not a Pokemon that's ever forced into Boots. We can run Scarf and Band and Life Orb and Resist Berry and Assault Vest as much as we were before, to great effect, and Specs, because it's great on the special side too, so it's a really, really solid Pokemon. Absolutely love Victini. It's in my like top 10 kill leaders all the time too. It's just such a good Pokemon. Man, I love it. Man, it's such a good mon. Okay. And Psychic Fire, man, such a good type. I'm really excited for Armarouge. I really hope it's not like base 20 speed. Like, I think it's gonna be, or not 20, but like very slow in general, because it could be really, really good. Alright, next up we have Musharna, who is going to come up here to the top of C tier. Really slept on Pokemon. As a bulky Psychic, say you have a team that's just very weak to offensive fightings, but you don't have any points left over, you draft in a Musharna. That is just how it's going to go. Very bulky, reliable recovery in Moonlight. It can Baton Pass and grab momentum. I don't think it gets Teleport, but it's slow enough to where the Baton Pass doesn't need to be minus priority, you know what I mean? Unless you're going up against other slower Pokemon, which typically doesn't happen, or teleport months, which would be unfortunate, but again, not the biggest deal in the world. It's something that you could definitely play around. It can Calm Mind and win games too. It can be Weakness Policy and just chew hits up and just be an absolute demon, and sweep through games that way. So it's definitely a very good Pokemon. I love me some Musharna, especially for like a low tier budget fighting check, which a lot of teams end up needing a lot of the time. Next up, we have Swoobat. I'm going to put Swoobat, I guess. No, we're going to put it at the top of D tier. Because, like, I get the idea behind it. I get, like, the cheesy, simple sweeps that you could do with, like, Terrain and Calm Mind and things like that. I've definitely done it before and seen it done before. I know Kurt had it in the BBL season before we won. And he won some pretty funny games with it, but that doesn't make it a very good Pokemon. It's still very frail. Even if you have like a Grassy Seed set that gets the defense boost, you're still getting 2-hit KO by all the knockoffs coming your way. Even with the +2 defense boost and the loss of your item, it's going to be very annoying. Now, you're very fast, which is a really cool tool. You have good coverage overall, which is nice. Psychic, Flying, and Fire is pretty solid, obviously. And it can be very annoying in that regard, but you know, I really think it's a bit too gimmicky for my liking. So I'm going to put it in D tier. I definitely think it has some viability, though, and I've definitely drafted it before, but not my favorite Pokemon. Next up, we have a Pokemon that I really want to draft, but I've never gotten the... No, I did in one of the APA drafts, and it was awesome. I actually loved it in said draft. So let me go ahead and grab it here in Big Sigilyph. I'm going to put Sigilyph here in C tier as well. This Pokemon with Life Orb and a Magikarp with its crazy coverage, like we said, Psychic Flying is a good type combination, especially when you have Heat Wave, as well as like Dazzling Gleam and Energy Ball and all this great coverage. Sigilyph can be an absolute monster. It is a very solid Pokemon. 97 as a speed tier is pretty solid. Speaking of the base 95s that kind of like occupy a lot of teams and things like that, can be really solid. You can Calm Mind. You can even be like the what do you call it, Magikarp Flame Orb set and Psycho Shift and Cosmic Power Up and win. I ran Cosmic Power Weakness Policy against D-Ray and swept him with that. It has again phenomenal coverage between Heat Wave, Ice Beam, Energy Ball, Psychic, Air Slash, anything else, Dark Pulse, I guess, Dazzling Gleam, which is obviously a great tool. Flash Cannon even. It has Flash Cannon. Why does it have Flash Cannon? I don't know. But it's a very solid utility Pokemon. And again, having a flying type that just never has to run boots is incredible. Magikarp is such a good ability. So obviously Sigilyph is going to be great here. And Tinted Lens can also put in some absolute work too, especially with its stab combination. So Big Sigilyph is going to kind of reside here in C tier. I don't know if it's in the Scarlet and Violet decks, but I hope it is because I would love to draft it in a limited meta. I didn't do it last gen, so I'd love to do it now. Next up, we have Gothitelle, which we will be considering Shadow Tag. I'm going to go ahead and put it in B tier personally. I do like Goth. I have drafted it before, and again, it's a lot like Wob in the sense that it forces an incredible amount of prep. I think where people kind of fall flat with Goth is when they bring it to try and set up and trap something and win, whereas I think Goth is much better suited to trap something, eliminate it, so something else can set up and win, or just have no switch-ins, which is obviously really nice. It's a little tough kind of slotting it on teams a lot of the time, and giving up on a major role. But again, very good Pokemon overall. Definitely like me some Goth. Now we're moving to a Pokemon I really love in Reuniclus. I gotta put Reuni in A tier, man. Whether it be with physically defensive like Calm Mind, Acid Armor, Double Dance setup sets, or just fat defensive Rocky Helmet sets, or Assault Vest regen sets, offensive Trick Room sets. This thing does so much for a team, and it's so incredible at it. It's so reliable, it's so strong, it's so bulky. Mwah. Such an amazing Pokemon. One of my favorite Pokemon in my teams of all time was an Ubers League I did in Gen 7 where I had Mega Lucario plus a double Psychic Core of Victini Reuniclus, and it was so much fun. Every time I have drafted Reuniclus, I've absolutely adored it, and you know, I gotta give him the shout out that he deserves because this Pokemon is absolutely incredible. Absolutely love it. I once lost to a Timid Reuniclus. Timid Reuniclus has some viability, so obviously the things it does more reliably are going to be even better. So definitely enjoy it. Oh, and Duosion. We're going to put Duosion at like the top of D tier. It's solid as an EV mod. It does what Reuniclus does, but it has to avoid knockoffs like the Plague, which Reuniclus obviously does as well, but is a little bit more likely to want to eat one of those up with a Colbur Berry and Focus Blast something than something like Duosion is, obviously. So, yeah. But it still is definitely a solid Pokemon for like an NFE. Now, we're on to the last two of Gen 5. First is going to be Beheeyem. I suppose this Pokemon can Trick Room up, it can be analytic, but again, look at all the Psychic types above it and tell me why you're drafting Beheeyem, other than you think he has a cool design, and he is definitely pretty cool. I like his design a lot, but it doesn't mean he's a good Pokemon, so we're going to put Beheeyem here in D tier. I'm going to kind of keep moving along. Meloetta is going to be a B tier Pokemon. I know a lot of people who have just started playing Gen 8 probably haven't played much with Meloetta, and it's not a very commonly drafted Nat Dex Pokemon, but I feel like in Gen 7, I saw it all the time, and it was very solid, whether it be with an Assault Vest set, whether it be with Specs, or Scarf, or whether that be with like a Relic Song Pure Wet form one where it turns into a normal fighting type, which is an incredible stab combination. It gets ridiculously fast and strong in that form. A little bit more gimmicky, but can definitely work. And again, I love the Assault Vest variants. I love the Scarf and Specs variants. Calm Mind can put in some work as well. It gets U-turn from momentum. It can knock off items for great utility, and it has great coverage overall. So, I mean, what is there not to like about Meloetta? I think it's a very solid Pokemon, and a great pivot. I don't know if it's in Scarlet and Violet like home data mines. We'll see though. But yeah, definitely a cool Pokemon. Next up, we have yet another C tier Pokemon. I'm going to put Delphox here and C towards the top. Fire plus Psychic, again, an incredible ability. Loves the addition of Boots, which is awesome. Mystical Fire, like Wish, Protect, Toxic sets are really annoying for a lot of teams to deal with because the things that switch into Toxic don't appreciate Mystical Fires. I believe it can Calm Mind as well, which is nice. It has great cover. It has Grass Knot for waters. It's always a nice tool to have a fire type that can hit waters. But Psychic obviously rips through a lot of them as well. It's just a great utility Pokemon, whether it be offensively or defensively. It can do a lot for a team. So, pretty slept on Mon. Definitely worth giving a shot, though. Next up, we have Amel, aka Malamar. Here. Oh, no, just kidding. We have Meowstic. Meowstic sucks. I don't know. I'm going to put it in D tier. I just recently played a Meowstic, and, like, I guess I'm going to put it here because it has, like, prankster screens and things like that, but I don't know. Just draft something else. I feel like there's better utility and better screen setters that we can grab and things like that. Malamar is going to go, again, probably towards the top of D tier. It's like pure cheese potential alone kind of puts it towards the top of the tier, with superpower plus like Knock and Psycho Cut can be very, very annoying. But it is very slow. It does have that 4 times weakness to Bug and U-turn, and it's not the bulkiest thing in the world, so it can be taken advantage of. I like Assault Vest sets. I think Assault Vest sets are very solid. I wish it had like a way of healing itself up with like maybe a Dream Punch or like a Darker Psychic sucking move, I guess, and especially it makes sense because he's like a squid guy. But unfortunately he doesn't, so he can get worn down really, really fast. Rest variants are also pretty cool, but yeah, overall an okay Pokemon. Next up, we have Big Hoopa, which is a Pokemon I really want to try personally. I'm going to go ahead and put it here in C tier, right above Medicham. I think offensively it can be really cool, whether it be with Trick Room, Scarf, Band, Specs, things like that. It can basically do what Big Hoopa does, just a little bit worse, and with more common weaknesses to like Dark and Ghost as a 4 times, which is pretty unfortunate on a Pokemon that's a little bit slower. Hoopa, on the other hand, is a Pokemon that is absolutely incredible. I love me some Hoopa Unbound. It's going to go up here in A tier. Incredibly strong breaker. One of the best pure wall breakers in the game. It is very lacking defensively, especially on the Fizdef side. And again, that 4 times bug weakness is really annoying when U-turn is such a prevalent thing in our current metagame. But if you can position this thing correctly with a Band or a Specs or a Life Orb, you are picking a KO if you're aggressive enough. There's quite simply nothing that switches into Band, Specs, or Life Orb Hoopa at all. Scarf can be a great revenge killer, and it can be a solid Assault Vest mon. It has a great Speed stat, so AV Hoopa is definitely very good. It has good coverage for the things that switch into its stabs, and it just rips through teams overall. Definitely like me some Hoopa, though. Okay, now we're on to Gen 7 already. Man, oh man. We're going to kind of zoom through these bad Pokemon because I feel like I'm kind of beating a dead horse with them. Oricorio. Why are you drafting Oricorio? It's not very good. Oranguru. Trick Room Center, I suppose. I think I saw Jack draft it in CGT and then drop it like week 2 because he sucks. Not Jack, the Oranguru. That would have been mean if I was like, yeah, he sucks, he dropped Oranguru. No, Oranguru sucks, which is probably why he ended up dropping it. Definitely not a very good Pokemon. It's going to go down here in D tier. Same thing with Bruxish. I think Bruxish has a little bit of potential in the sense of, like, psychic things like strong draw sets can be really strong and things like that, but yeah, it's still not very good, and I've never seen it drafted, so I don't have any information to tell me otherwise. Now we can move on to a little bit better of Pokemon. First off, we have Tapu Lele, who is also going to go up here in A tier. As a pure breaker, it is pretty incredible. Now, personally, I don't have much experience with Lele. I used it in Gen 7 when it was broken and shouldn't have been allowed, and I won a championship with it. I have not used it once in Gen 8 when it was nerfed. I was talking about this last night with, I think it was Amel and Dell, in the sense that, like, it's crazy how Lele went from being absurdly broken in Gen 7 to kind of a slapped-on sleeper pick in the topper end of the tiers in Generation 8 in some places. And how big of a nerf 1.5 to 1.3 or 1.2 is. It's pretty incredible how much of a nerf that is and how much it really hurt Lele's damage output, but it still is a great breaker. It still 2 KOs most of the game and things like that with a Specs or a Life Orb. Scarf is obviously great. I love Assault Vest Lele too. I think Double Dance Lele's with like Calm Mind, Iron Defense, Draining Kiss can also be very annoying in the right matchup. I think in CGT, our final week, I just kept getting 6-0'd by that in mocks over and over and over again. So I had to bring Magician Klefki for it. But it's a really good Pokemon, and really appreciates solid breaking partners that, you know, demolish through steel types to kind of, you know, complement Lele here. And if you're an aggressive player, you can get in on aggressive doubles or get in your breakers on aggressive doubles with Lele, and you're going to have a good time with your offense here. So Lele is definitely very, very solid. And then, oh, I forgot to rank Gothita. Gothita's going in C tier. This is a lot like Wob in the sense that it forces amazing amounts of prep, but it's a little bit better at trapping things, in my opinion, with like Charm and, you know, shenanigans like that. Kind of forgot about that, but Goth is a great Pokemon. It used to be like 1 point consistently, which I think was really, really funny, but yeah, definitely a good Pokemon. Okay, next we have Solgaleo, Lunala, nothing. We do have Necrozma, which is personally, again, might be a hot take, is an S tier Pokemon for me. Again, if we want to talk about versatility, whether it be as a Stealth Rocker, a Calm Mind Sweeper, Swords Dance, Dragon Dance, or just a raw breaker, autotomized Meteor Beam, weakness policy, physically defensive to take on, you know, fighting types and whatever it might be, Necrozma is your guy. It is very good at doing these things. It is very versatile. Prism Armor is an incredible ability on a Pokemon as bulky as Necrozma, and it just bullies teams. It just absolutely bullies through teams, and I absolutely love it. It's a great mod. So Necro is going to go up here in S tier for sure. For me personally, it's a round 1 pick in my mind. And move on to our last generation, which is full of a bunch of either really good or really lacking Pokemon. The first is going to be Galarian Rapidash. I have drafted this really early gen before. It is not terrible. It's decently fast. It can like SD, I think, but again, it's not the bulkiest thing in the world. It's not the strongest thing in the world, even with the Swords Dance up. So it's going to have to go down here in D tier for me personally. Then we're also going to have Galarian Mr. Mime. Again, we're going to put you next to Mr. Mime. You're worse than him, but like kind of the same. That's all we're going to elaborate on. No further comment. Then we're going to have Orbeetle, which I think deserves a spot in D tier because I have seen it drafted. I wouldn't personally draft it, but as a Sticky Webber, physically defensive, bulky mon, body press, things like that, it could definitely put in some work. We also have Orbeetle here, who I'm also going to put in D tier. Personally, we're going to put a little bit higher than most things. I think right here is fine. It can Sticky Web, it can U-turn, dual screens, things like that, but I'm personally of the impression that Sticky Webs are not very good in Generation 8, in my mind. So, I think it's very much so overvalued on a Pokemon like Orbeetle, and I wouldn't draft Orbeetle because I needed Sticky Web, because I don't think anybody needs Sticky Web, if that makes any sense. Next up, we have Hatterene, who is also going to go in C tier right here. I'm probably going to put it right here. Because I think Xatu offers a little bit more utility. But with Magic Bounce and Trick Room, it's a very reliable Trick Room setter. Only issue is it doesn't have a means of like teleporting out. It can Baton Pass, which is nice, but it's going to be a fast Baton Pass in a Trick Room, which is just basically switching. So you might as well just switch at that point, unless you think you're forcing switches. But if something's probably switching on you, Trick Room, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just not going to end up working out that way most of the time. So it doesn't really have a means of getting in Trick Room sweepers, which makes Trick Room not as good in singles, in my opinion. Unless you're like a slow bro, slow king, and you're teleporting in your Trick Room abuser, I don't think Trick Room's that good, or even Claydol. So while it reliably gets up Trick Room, I think it's much better suited as like an OTR mod itself, like a Life Orb Trick Room set, opposed to facilitating other sweepers to come in and try and set up and win the game. So, or attack and win the game and break through. So, yeah. Mr. Rhyme, I'm going to put Mr. Rhyme right next to Mr. Mr. Mime, Mr. Crime. I don't know. They're both ugly and terrible, so they're gonna stay right near each other. And DD is a very solid breaker. I'm gonna go ahead and put it up here. Shout out to Jay Bear. I know he's gonna be happy to at least see DD in C tier, getting the respect it truly deserves. I'm actually gonna put it a little bit higher. This Pokemon is very, very strong with Expanding Force, Psychic Terrain, Hyper Voice, Dazzling Gleam. I think it gets Mystical Fire as well. It can really break through a lot of teams if it has the sufficient speed tier in the matchup. It's just kind of hard justifying drafting DD, personally, in my opinion, but I know Jay Bear loves that mod, so we gotta give him some love, right? Then we have Calyrex, who's going in D tier. I remember in BBR last season, they had this shit in like tier 3 solely because it was new, and they were like, people are gonna want to draft it. I have never seen anybody besides fucking Amol draft this terrible Pokemon. This might be one of the worst Pokemon of all time. He gets to stay in last place, for sure. Absolutely abysmal, terrible Pokemon. And I get the idea is like it gets strong when it fuses with the horses, but who are obviously super broken and not going to be on this list. But you know, still, I thought it was funny. And we just have 3 more Pokemon here. First off, we have G-Bro. And I think I talked about it in a recent video, but I think G-Bro is super, super, super unexplored and super slept on. I'm only going to put it in C tier because I have not personally used it myself, but I do think there's a very, very solid Pokemon. Regen, again, is the best ability in Draft League. That might be my next discussion video on why Regen is so broken in Draft League. But it's the best ability in Draft League, and it's a little bit less bulky than Slowbro, Slowking, and G-King and things like that, but it is very strong offensively. You can set up Trick Room, Nasty Block, Calm Mind, do all the things that the other ones do, just a little bit more offensively and a little bit less bulky-wise. But again, I've seen it put in some absolute work the few times I've seen it drafted. I haven't used it myself personally, but I want to give it a go because I definitely think it's worth a shot. Then we have G Articuno, who is going to go here, probably, honestly, in D tier. We'll put him in second of D tier. It's just a little bit lacking in its offensive move pool. It does get recovery, which the other Galarian birds don't get, which is definitely cool. And it can follow up with some like cheesy sets and things like that. I know its signature move has the chance to freeze. It's like Psychic type Ice Beam, which I guess Ice Beam is Psychic, is Ice type Psychic, but regardless, it can Calm Mind, it can do like Grassy Sheet stuff, it gets competitive, which can be, you know, pretty exploitable, but at the end of the day, it doesn't touch steals, and I think that's a pretty big downside in the draft format, personally. I don't know. At least me, personally. And then lastly, where's the GOAT? Here he is. We're going to go ahead and put him only behind Megazam. I think for value-wise, I know I'm going to put him behind Mega Gallade, too. I can't put him above Mega Gallade. But this Pokemon is incredible. Man, G-King, I am sipping on the G-King Kool-Aid. It is absolutely an insane Pokemon, whether it be Assault Vest, Calm Mind, Nasty Plot, what do you call it? I've even seen spec sets pop off. Trick Black Sludge is one of my favorite sets to see on G-King. It does so many things so well. It never dies in one hit unless you're just absolutely crazy and leaving it on like a Bander's EQ or something nuts like that. You can pretty much construct this thing to 1v1 almost any Pokemon you really want to. It spreads status with Sludge Bomb and Scald and things like that. It has incredible coverage, incredible bulk, very strong too deceptively. It's so hard to switch into, it's so hard to kill. It's just an incredible Pokemon. I am 100% sipping on the G-King Kool-Aid. It is a great Pokemon. So, yeah, that is going to be our Psychic type tier list. I'm not going to rank these Hisuiamons because we don't know anything about them in-game, and for some reason there's 4 of them. But let me know what you guys think of my Psychic type tier list in the comments below. Let me know if you agree, disagree, all that fun stuff. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you guys in the next one. Later.